Very warm welcome to the video blog for Rekindling and Kindness, and also a way to improve our ideas around microsystem work. Today we have a fantastic guest, and very shortly Annette will introduce him. I just want to remind you that this is the third video blog we have together, and we hope that we can continue and meet you wherever you are around the world in this kind of video blog. And do not hesitate to respond with some thoughts around it to Annette or my email. My name is Göran Henriks, and I work in the region Jönköping together with
Annette Nilsson, and I also work in the region Jönköping. And today we are very happy to welcome you, Peter Lashman, and I would like you to introduce yourself a little shortly. Who are you, Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Lashman. I'm the Chief Executive of ISQA, which is the International Society for Quality in Healthcare. I'm a pediatrician, originally from South Africa. I live in London usually, but I've been in Dublin during the lockdown for the last 6 months or 8 months. So I travel between London and Dublin, but currently in Dublin. So that's me.
Lovely to have you here, Peter. And last time we met, I think it was in South Africa, and we had a dialogue around co-production and kindness and how that influences healthcare. And I would like to ask you, why do you think there is a global interest in the word kindness just now? And what is kindness for you?
Well, for me, it's really a return to the core values that we have as healthcare providers. The reason why we have become healthcare providers. If you think historically, when healthcare or health services started, what the healthcare provider could provide was very limited. There weren't many interventions. So one of the key weapons they had against disease was compassion, empathy, and kindness. And that was what they had, besides many things that didn't work. But one thing that did work was empathy, kindness, compassion. To the 20th century, what happened is that healthcare got all the medications, interventions, and investigations and technology that start to treat disease rather than treat people. So then the dominant force in healthcare, particularly from the USA, became technology. So you could be treated with technology, and kindness and compassion was lost. So we became a technological solution rather than a human solution. And kindness was forgotten, particularly in the latter part of the last century.
Really interesting.
I think it's a lovely approach you have, Peter, and doing this historical journey. Why do you think it is so important right now? We could have started 5 years ago, but what makes this time so lacking of this approach?
Well, you know, I really do believe we have to look at the historical construct and look at how healthcare has developed over time. And possibly when I first started thinking about such issues was about 20 years ago when I was in my doctorate. It was on the concept of child abuse and why do people abuse children and what happens. This is a total lack of kindness of parenthood. And a friend of mine said, well, you should read Foucault. And so I read The Birth of the Clinic. And The Birth of the Clinic described how healthcare became technological and moved from compassion in a way that he said with the clinical gaze. And I think that over the last 20 years, the clinical gaze has started to change. And that clinical gaze by clinicians is changing from purely technology to seeing the people who have to be seen as people, not as patients. As soon as you take the word patient from the person and return them to the person, then one realizes that technology is not sufficient. And over the last 5 to 6 years, there's been the growth of the person over the patient. And so as soon as we start accepting that the people we see are not patients, they are people or persons who so happen to have a condition that causes them to come to see us, then we have to realize that we can't just be technological and treat disease, we are treating the whole person. And that's happened really in the last 5 to 6 years as this realization has come forward, and we've seen patients as people.
Really interesting.
Yes.
I just want, before we will go further to the word rekindling, I really like the word compassion. And would you just very shortly say, Peter, the difference between empathy and compassion?
Well, you see, I think that I have to go back to my own clinical practice, because I only stopped clinical practice a few years ago, and I used to see children who did not get better. So I was a polymath, and the last group I see children with chronic conditions, and people said to me, "What do you specialize in?" I said, "I specialize in people. I'm not really interested what condition they have. I'm interested in understanding what it means to that person as a parent and to the child as a child. If they have diabetes, if they have epilepsy, if they have rheumatoid arthritis, what is the change?" Now, empathy is trying to feel something. Compassion goes a little deeper than that. It's beyond the empathy to understand how people feel. And when I was at the most compassionate, the actual one parent said to me as they left, they said, "You are our rock." And I said, "Well, what does that mean to me, that I'm their rock?" And then I understood that I was almost like a valence, that I brought in their feelings and returned them to them in a different way, so they felt as if they had been heard and listened to, and that they had been treated with kindness.
Lovely. Okay.
Peter, the time we are in right now are for many in healthcare a very heavy time, a time where people work more than they could imagine that they have energy for and power for. And a lot of us come into discussions about how will this end, and it's so hard and all the time. Now, for me, there is a big opportunity. So I think it's time to talk about rekindling healthcare and find the ways that we can do the things we were imagining before. We can now make it happen after the pandemic. Can't you describe for me, what means rekindling, and what do you see we need to do?
Well, I think we had a problem with the pandemic because it showed how fragile the concept of person-centered care is and how limited it had been. For me, the first mistake we made in person-centered care was concentrating on the patient rather than starting with the provider of healthcare. Because for kindness to exist and for compassion to exist, we have to show compassion for the healthcare provider. And what COVID did to us, it revealed that we had no compassion for the provider. Now, I'll give examples in, I don't know if it happened in Sweden, at the height of the first wave, the public came out to clap for the healthcare providers, which was tokenistic. Every week they'd come out and clap tokenistically.
Yes.
That was empathy rather than compassion, maybe. Because what they didn't really understand was that the healthcare provider who was making very difficult decisions needed compassion themselves from each other and from the wider public, because they were working under very difficult conditions. What happened was many decisions were made which were detrimental to the person as a patient. They were treated as a viral infection rather than as someone who has a family, a dog, a cat, and children, and a life, and they were separated out. So we went backwards, but it did allow us to answer your question of the rekindling. Because now, just think of the words, rekindling. That word is, so rekindling is relighting. But in the word rekindling is the word kin. And what does kin mean? Well, kin is not the person. Kin is the person's family, their friends, their community. And where does kin go to? It goes into the word kindness. And what is kindness? That goes into the word compassion, respect. So can you see how all of this is connected? And I think that I sent you the model I've been writing with Paul Batalden and Chris Van Heck on the need to change our concepts of quality. Because we think that the 6 domains are incorrect. Because the domain of person-centered care, which includes kindness, is not a domain. It's all-encompassing. It surrounds every domain. So you cannot achieve quality without person or kin-centered care, which involves the values that we have at the core: respect, compassion, holistic care, and partnership or co-production. Those are the values. They're not a project. So when you talk about co-production, that's about a value that you have. And so the rekindling is the changing of our concept of what quality is. And saying, sure, we need effective care, timely care, but you can't do that without being person-centered or kin-centered with the values as inherent in all that we do. So what it is doing is changing away from the technical part of quality, which I find Lean or Six Sigma or model for improvement, that's technical. The microsystem theory, that's technical unless you surround it with this concept of kinship and the core values are at the center. And that's how I see we're going to rekindle.
Oh.
Annette, this is a morning.
Yeah. What a wonderful start in this morning.
Yes.
Thank you, Peter.
I think it was such a good start of Friday morning. And Peter, lovely to meet you like this. And it's so exclusive to have you in our video blog.
Thanks very much. And as I said, all of these are in that paper we've just published. So have a look at it, because to me, it's a resetting. It's a resetting of our concept of quality. And that's the rekindling.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks very much.